Hello, my name is Dr. Veni from VENRO HEALTHCARE. Welcome to today's session. Today we are going to discuss something that just will not leave the news. I think it's one of those things that have lingered and lingered and lingered. We thought that it was going to be a matter of weeks and it would be out of the news, but there is a lot of interest from the public about DNA testing. So we will talk about that in the next couple of minutes. But first, before we go into DNA testing, let's understand what DNA is. So DNA is a chemical that's found in most of our cells, and it's responsible for transmitting most of the characteristics that we have from our parents to us and afterwards to our children. So it's the chemical that's responsible for transmitting information along different generations. And through this chemical, we pass on certain physical characteristics and other characteristics such as intelligence. Half of your DNA comes from your mother and the other half comes from your father. Medically, there are several uses for DNA testing. We can use it to screen for certain conditions that are passed on within families. Some families do have genes that predispose them or increase the likelihood of members of that family getting certain conditions. Certain kinds of breast cancer can actually be screened by testing for these genes. The kind of DNA testing that's generating a lot of news currently is what we call paternity testing, whereby we use DNA to determine the likelihood that a man or a male is the father of a child. Most of human cells or our cells do have DNA, so you can actually use just about almost every tissue to test for compatibility or to test for matching between DNAs of different individuals. In most cases, samples are obtained from the inside of the cheeks by swabbing. So once we swab, we're able to get cells that are within the inside of our cheeks from the children that we want, whose paternity we want to know, as well as from their parents. There are different kinds of DNA tests. They're actually simple kits that can be used at home. However, the type of tests that you use is usually determined by what you need the DNA tests, the purpose you intend the DNA tests to serve. In case the purpose is legal, there are designated laboratories where these tests have to be conducted. So you cannot do a home test and use it for legal purposes. You definitely need the results from that test to be confirmed by a lab that has been accredited to carry out paternity tests. Like we mentioned, our mothers and fathers each contribute half of our DNA. So we have 46 chromosomes and we get 23 of our chromosomes from our mothers and 23 from our fathers. Within these chromosomes, they are what we call genetic markers, and it's those genetic markers that are examined to determine if they match between a child and a potential parent. Most tests usually compare 21 genetic markers to determine if there is a relationship between the alleged father and the child. Once the genetic markers of the child and the father have been tested, there is a formula called the combined paternity index. That index is a probability, it's a statistical formula which will state the probability or the likelihood of the father and child being related. The combined paternity index is the probability or the likelihood that the alleged father who is being tested is the true biological father of that child compared to the probability that another random man from the same ethnic group is indeed the father. So in other words, if that index is 99.9%, it means that the probability that the alleged father is the true biological father of that child is 99.9% compared to the probability that another random man from that ethnic group is the father. So positive paternity tests are never indicated as 100%. It's because this is a probability, and all it states is really it rules out the probability of another random man being the father. And you could say, well, it's 99.9%. How does this relate? What happens to that 0.001%? We can still say that the test proves beyond reasonable doubt that that father is indeed the father of the child. However, when the paternity test is negative, it will state that the probability of that father being the father of the child is 0%. So in other words, a negative test is 100% negative. So once we do get a negative test, it does mean that there is no chance at all, no chance that the alleged father is indeed the father of the child. One of the questions that viewers asked is whether a DNA test can distinguish between two brothers who are both possible fathers, and the answer is a big yes. However, this may require extended analysis because these brothers, since they are related, already have some similar biomarkers between them. However, with extended analysis, it can be determined who of the brothers is the biological father of a child. If both brothers are available and willing to provide samples which can be compared with those of a child, this process is actually easier because each of their samples or DNA markers are independently compared to that of a child, and for one of them, the match will be 99.9%, which would mean that at least you have proven beyond reasonable doubt that that particular brother is the father of that child. For the other, there will still be a level of similarity. However, it will not be close to 99.9%. Another question that viewers have asked is whether one can get wrong DNA results. Yes, indeed, you could get wrong DNA results, especially if you do tests using home kits, which you might not be very well versed with. You can also get wrong results if samples are contaminated during the process of collecting them. It's important that the samples, when collected, are clearly labeled and packed separately to ensure that there is no mix-up of the cells or the samples that have been taken from each of the individuals. And of course, there could be foul play, especially with one of the parents who might not want the true paternity of a child to be determined. There could be foul play whereby samples are actually swapped during the process of collecting them or immediately after collecting them. So it's important that a clear and straightforward procedure is taken when samples are actually being collected. And for legal purposes, there are usually witnesses that do attend the process of collecting these samples and labeling them to ensure that samples from the rightful individuals have been collected. Okay, so we'll close with one last question from one of our viewers. One of us is asking, is it possible to test for DNA before a child is born? Yes, a big yes. So this can be done. However, the process of collecting samples from the baby who is not yet born has to be done by an expert to ensure that the baby is not harmed in the process. But yes, this can be done, and you can do contact your gynecologist in case you need this to happen and have that sample collected safely while working with experts. I hope this was useful. Please do contact us at VENRO HEALTHCARE for any questions about DNA testing or any other health related topics. See you soon. Bye.